I think there's something like 4,000 people have been arrested in England for thought crimes.
You know that situation has gotten out of control when it becomes discussed globally simultaneously. The riots and public disturbances are leading to increased conversations around censorship and the ways that censorship could be implemented and the way that ordinary free speech laws might be bypassed. Here's Joe Rogan talking about that on his show.
Just terrible government overreach. You're seeing it now in England where people are getting arrested for tweets.
Yeah. Well,
England, people talk about Soviet Russia, like how bad Russia is in terms of cracking down on thought police and cracking down on bad tweets and things like that. I think the statistics are, I think England I think there's something like 4,000 people have been arrested in England for thought crimes, where they've said things online that people find to be a hateful thing or a problematic thing. And I think it's only 200 in Russia.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That says a lot.
Yeah.
Maybe in Russia they're too scared to do it at all.
Could be. Yeah. But the fact that they're comfortable with finding people who've said something that they disagree with and putting them in a fucking cage in England in 2024 is really wild.
Yeah.
Especially they're saying you can get arrested just for retweeting something.
The offence of incitement to racial hatred involves publishing or distributing material which is insulting or abusive, which is intended to or likely to start racial hatred. So if you retweet that, then you're republishing that, and then potentially you're committing that offence. And we do have dedicated police officers who are scouring social media. Their job is to look for this material. And then follow up with identification arrests and so forth. So it's a really, really serious. People might think they're not doing anything harmful. They are, and the consequences will be visited upon them.
And here's the problem with that. Even if you say, yeah, well, people shouldn't tweet hateful things. I agree. They shouldn't. But who's to decide what is a hateful thing?
That's the problem. That's
subjective. The problem. It's very subjective.
And it still shouldn't be a crime.
And in our lifetime, we've seen that get moved, right? So it used to be if a guy thought he was a woman and his name was Doug and you grew up with Doug and all of a sudden Doug wants to be called Debbie, if you call him Doug, it's no big deal. Like, yeah, maybe you're being rude to call him Doug, but it's not a hate crime,
right.
Okay? Well, now a lot of people think it's a hate crime, and that got you banned from Twitter for life. So if you dead named someone on the old Twitter, you are banned for life. Dead name, not even making up a name. You can call them an idiot. You can call someone an idiot. Okay, forget about a man in a dress. Maybe that's a problem. But if you call like a regular guy an idiot, you stupid fuck, fine, no problem. But if you call Doug, you will get banned for life. Okay, that's the new hate speech. That's crazy. Now, if that keeps going, that didn't exist before. If that keeps going, maybe you can go to jail for calling him Doug. Maybe they think it's okay to put you in jail because you violated their hate speech laws.
Yeah, we were really quick to get rid of God, weren't we? So, like, we don't believe in God anymore. We're too sophisticated. We've got technology now. We've got reason now. But when the state starts acting like a God, sets up cultural edicts and moral truths that it won't allow to be debated or challenged, it has become a de facto God. It's posing the same kind of principles that a God might pose. And it's also functioning like a God. It's punishing. It's vengeful. The difference is, I suppose, that a God requires faith. The faith is, I suppose, the subtle belief that what you're participating in is real, even though it's extrasensory. The idea, to use what Rogan cited as an example, that it's so cruel to refer to someone who's changed their identity by their previous name that it warrants a lifetime ban from social spaces. You would have to believe that idea. What if you don't believe that idea? You're in the instance that Joe Rogan outlined, that it doesn't matter whether you believe it or not. It's got absolute power. In fact, it's less sort of subtle than God, isn't it? Because like those of us that do believe in God spend a lot of time thinking like, wow, it doesn't actually really matter if you pray for that. It might not happen. Actually, if you're interfacing with an atemporal, aspatial being, you have to sort of question your understanding of chronology and how petitionary prayer might even work if all reality simultaneously exists, or if the sacrifice of Christ is the one redeeming act that was required. What does your petition or your personal sacrifice, or what difference does your morality make? There are so many enormous questions that exist within faith, but with the state can say, if you say that, you're going to jail. If you don't agree with me, you're going to jail. I wonder if there are universal principles that we can all agree on, like, kindness. We should all be kind to one another. We shouldn't be violent to one another. That everyone has the right to a fair hearing, innocent until proven guilty. That everyone has the right to religious free expression. That ultimately we are all one planet and to a degree responsible for one another. But those kind of principles can only be advanced if there is a kind of moral authority that there's a consensus around, that we all agree, that we back and believe in. And at the moment, you do not have that at all. In American politics, you have nothing but strife and division and hatred, vacuity and loathing emanating from all sides of the conversation, where even a figure that's as popular and broadly speaking loved, except by his obvious and many detractors, as Joe Rogan, can't sort of in passing say, hey, I like Bobby Kennedy, without being subject to wide condemnation. In our country, the UK, it's impossible to conduct a conversation about the nature of migration, the rights and roles of a person who considers themselves a citizen or civilian, what patriotism means now, what community authority means now, what power you want to grant the state, what free speech means now, and what its limits are, and who you want those limits set by. We can't continue to bring you this beautiful content without the support of our partners.
Hey, this is exciting. We've got a great partner today. It's Rumble. But beyond Rumble, it's Rumble's latest venture. Let me ask you first, are you a Sleepy Joe type character with zero cognitive performance, struggling to muster focus and brain power for basic things like running the United States of America? You've got to stop drinking woke liberal coffee that hates you and your way of life and start your day by drinking Rumble's very own 1775 coffee. This is going to be the best tasting coffee you've ever had. Seriously good, ethically sourced from a family farm in the high altitude mountains of Bolivia. Not in the Bolivian lowlands, run not by a family but by a single man still living with a pet. No, instead of waking up and drinking your big corporation-owned woke ideology coffee that's probably making you sick from the pesticides it's sprayed with, try Rumble's 1775 revolutionary coffee. Support freedom of speech. Build a parallel economy that actually values you and loves you. My favourite? It's dark, of course. I've always found the lure of the dark irresistible. I'm sorry, how can I stay mad at you, but you're just going to have to wait over there for a little while. Level up your morning routine with a 1775 coffee. Sleep all night knowing your hard-earned dollary dues are going towards supporting freedom-loving creators like me on Rumble. Visit 1775coffee.com now, pick up your first bag, use the code BRAND to save 10% on your first order. Oh, come on. Why choose,
As soon as those events took place, I mean the instigating incident, the inciting incident of the murder of the children and the stabbing of the other people present, we were in a kind of tinderbox situation. And to see so quickly people talking about its consequences without addressing, one, the event itself, and also the context within which those events took place, was an odd manoeuvring of information. What we're not seeing anywhere in the discourse in this country, or at least certainly not in the media that I'm looking at, and maybe it's because I limit myself now to looking at it because it's so rancid and wretched and dreadful and awful and insidious and toxic and polluting. But what I don't sense is, okay, this is the situation that we're in now. There seem to be a lot of people that are really concerned about migration. Everyone knows that rioting and violence is wrong. So in order to mitigate the likelihood of rioting, we're going to require, in fact, open discourse, honest conversation, democracy, decentralization of power, maximal control over individual communities, acknowledgement that there is some social tension that needs to be addressed in order to be ameliorated. There's no appetite to have that conversation at all. In fact, the opposite's happening. What we're seeing is the condemning of the conversation. Anyone would condemn violence. Violence is wrong. Violence is wrong. Rioting is wrong. So that means you can have that principle when you say the Black Lives Matter riots were wrong. January 6th riots, wrong. The riots in the UK, wrong. And the riots in the UK prior to these events that were confined to other communities, they were wrong. That's good, because now we're not condemning any individual group. There should not be riots. Okay, what are we saying about free speech then? Who's going to control it? Who do we trust? It's such a failing at such a profound moral level when there is no trust in the state, when there is no trust in the government, that the government cannot claim to be arbiters of principles that we all agree in. And if someone hits you with an idea like, but they have a mandate, like, for example, in our country, of course, the centrist and, let's say, globalist, ultimately is a good way as any is to describe them, Labour Party government were elected on a significant mandate that under scrutiny does look a lot like 30% of the vote in public because of the way our electoral system is constructed. That is seen as a mandate to continue the war between Ukraine and Russia. That's seen, obviously, as a mandate to govern. That's a sort of a systemic problem that's not going to be altered by online discourse. The problem comes when a government starts to make unprecedented yet predictable measures when it comes to free speech. I think a lot of us sensed that we were in for a pretty rough and authoritarian ride under a Starmer Labour Party, probably because of his authoritarian stance in previous bureaucratic positions. Obviously, what I mean by that is that when he was head of the Crown Prosecution Services and there were disruption and violent riots and looting in this country, they set up 24-hour courts and they tried in Crown courts youngsters, meaning they were lost their right to anonymity that they would have had in magistrate courts. So we knew that this was likely to be an authoritarian government, but of course none of us could have known how quickly that would have been revealed or the manner in which it would have been revealed. Hey, thanks for watching. If you want to see more uncensored content where free speech can flourish, join our live stream. Click the link right here to watch the next video if you want to, or become a member of a growing movement. Download the Rumble app and you'll be informed every time we make a new piece of content. Stay free.